Absolutely. I can't tell you, and I know you've experienced this too, whether it's a single mom with 3 kids just trying to figure out what day it is, or it's a multi-millionaire who's got resources that far exceed anything I could imagine. I've rarely sat down across from somebody and had them be able to articulate, what do you actually want? They cannot answer that question, and they fill it with addictions, they fill it with hobbies, they fill it with dopamine chase. They fill it with so much stuff, and nobody can answer that question. What do you want? Because we just don't have a culture that has a shared vision of where we're headed. We have a culture of, you're hurting and somebody else's fault, and let's start pointing fingers. And man, we've got to circle the wagons on a shared vision moving forward.
Yeah.
Because there's what do you want? No, that's not a question anybody asks. It's, what do I don't want, and why am I feeling just uncomfortable? It's because of them. It's because of him. It's because of her.
Well, then if it's what you don't want, you're driven by negative emotion. Eh?
That's right. If you're running from, not to.
If you're driven by a vision, that's positive emotion, because approaching something positive in a visionary manner generates positive emotion. If you're only fleeing from things you don't want, then you're constantly in a state of anxiety and depression. That's how it works. Because
where did that go? Where did we lose a shared vision? Why can't somebody put a flag in the ground and say, this is where we're headed? That seems to be gone.
Yeah, well, that's a complicated question, you know. I mean, I would say that's the consequence in the most fundamental sense of the death of God in the most fundamental way. It's the death of a sense of higher order unity. Eh? Now, it's also a very complicated question. If you ask someone, what do you want? If you could ask your wife that, what do you want? You'll probably freeze her into immobility, because it's really like asking, how do you want all of your life to go? Please summarize. And one of the things that, well, it's a lot, you know. And one of the ways that you can deal with that, which you undoubtedly know as someone who's conversant with cognitive behavioral techniques, is you can ask people more micro questions too about what they want. So you might say, well, we did that on the dating front already, right? We talked about that. We talked about how you might think about how you want your meal times to go. We only talked about dinner time, but you could talk about breakfast and lunch as well. And then there are other micro domains that are very crucial that you can also consider. It's like, so you could ask yourself, well, if you could have the education you wanted, what would that look like? If you had the job or career track that would motivate you, just hypothetically, what might that look like? Sketch out a bad plan. If you had some friends, first, do you want some friends? And if so, how many? And if you had friends and the right number, how much time per week would you like to spend with them? And if you had some time outside of work and familial responsibilities, what might you like to do with your time that you would really like to do? And the thing about these questions is that they're real questions.